Do you think Afrikaner farmers are the most persecuted group in the world?
I think those 49 people that came certainly felt they were persecuted, and they've passed every sort of check mark that had to be checked off in terms of meeting the requirements for that. They live in a country where farms are taken and land is taken on a racial basis.
Okay.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So I had to start recording immediately after watching this because that exchange was wild. Senator Tim Kaine, who usually speaks from a very moral and principled position, tried to corner Secretary Marco Rubio with what looked like a gotcha moment. But when you actually listen closely, Kaine's argument starts to fall apart a bit. His point basically sounded like, if America can't help everyone in the world, then it shouldn't help anyone at all. And honestly, that kind of thinking doesn't really match the reality governments deal with every day. During the debate, Kaine criticized a small group of farmers who said they had been targeted and treated unfairly. But instead of focusing on their actual claims, he kept turning the conversation into a bigger political argument. Rubio handled it differently. He stayed calm the entire time and didn't really get dragged into the drama. He kept bringing the conversation back to what he believes government should focus on: protecting the country, securing the borders, and balancing compassion with practical decision-making. The difference between both sides were pretty obvious. One side focused more on policies and how government works in practice, while the other focused more on politics and ideology. Let's keep watching how this plays out and see how Rubio responds as the conversation continues.
Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you about the program. It's the United States Refugee Assistance Program, and this is a program that state is the manager of, but together with other cabinet secretariats, DHS and HHS, state plays the lead management role, and it is how to manage the U.S. refugee assistance programs in tandem with contractors who help the United States on that. By an executive order on the first day of his presidency, President Trump paused all refugee programs and has canceled contracts to the agencies like the U.S. Catholic Church or Lutheran Refugee Services or HIAS or Church World Services who've been resettling refugees. Those programs are paused. There's litigation about it, but as far as I know, the United States is not, or the administration has not withdrawn the executive order. So there's essentially from this administration no refugee programs for anyone except. In early February, the president announced a special refugee program for Afrikaner farmers, justified A, by some concerns about South African foreign policy, but B, a claim that these were persecuted individuals. So right now, the U.S. refugee program allows a special program for Afrikaner farmers, the first group of whom arrived at Dulles Airport in Virginia not long ago, while shutting off the refugee program for everyone else. Do you think Afrikaner farmers are the most persecuted group in the world?
I think those 49 people that came certainly felt they were persecuted, and they've passed every sort of check mark that had to be checked off in terms of meeting the requirements for that. They live in a country where farms are taken and land is taken on a racial basis.
Okay. Do you think they're more persecuted than Uyghurs or Rohingyas, or more persecuted than political dissidents in Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua, or more persecuted than those who would be threatened should they be returned to Afghanistan by violence by the Taliban?
Well, the problem we face there is the volume problem, okay? If you look at all the persecuted people of the world, it's millions of people. They can't all come here. And we had refugee programs that were acting as a magnet for people to come here.
Prioritize Afrikaner farmers?
Well, because it's a small subset, it's a new issue, and the president identified it as a problem and wanted to use it as an example. But that's different from having these refugee programs that were basically spending money to put people up in communities and accommodate them, and it was acting as a magnet. Millions of people entered this country illegally, and today the border is sealed.
Let me challenge you, and I'm just going to say for the public, if you want to understand about the, quote, persecution of Afrikaner farmers, go look at the composition of the South African government. Since July of 2024, there's a government of national unity, and the opposition party to the ANC, the Afrikaner Party, the Democracy Alliance, is part of the governing coalition. They joined the governing coalition a year ago, and the leader of that party was given the remit of Agriculture Minister, John Steenhuisen. He is the leader of the former Afrikaner Party, still widely representing Afrikaners. He is the Minister of Agriculture in South Africa right now. I assert that this claim that there's persecution of Afrikaner farmers is completely specious. Are you aware ever during the apartheid era in South Africa did the United States establish a special program to allow South African blacks who were treated as second-class citizens in the apartheid program, a special program so they could claim refugee status in the United States?
No, because I was probably in 9th grade or 8th grade at the time.
Yeah, well, then I don't expect you to know. I'll just tell you, never has there been a special program for Africans to come in as refugees to the United States. We've allowed special programs for people being persecuted for their religion, Soviet-era Jews. We've allowed special programs for people fleeing from communism, Cuba, Vietnam, the Soviet Union. We've never allowed a special program to allow Africans into the United States in an expedited refugee status until now. Afrikaner farmers living in a nation governed by a government of national unity that includes the main Afrikaner Party. And actually, an even more right-wing Afrikaner Party is also included in the coalition government. Now, would you agree with me, Mr. Secretary, that if we're interpreting the statutory phrase, a well-justified fear of persecution, we should try to do that in an even-handed way?
I think we should try to do that in the interest of the national security of the United States.
So okay, I agree with you too. We should. Should we try to do it in an even-handed way? So for example, should we say, if you're persecuted on the grounds of your religion, we'll let you in if you're a Christian, but not if you're a Muslim?
I think that the United States has a right to allow into this country and prioritize allowance of who they want to allow to come in.
But
I think there's
but I'm going to ask you, so a well-justified fear of persecution?
Yeah, they thought that their farms were
you don't
being
think
burned
that
down and they would
means
be
anything?
killed. I think that's a pretty good justification for wanting to come. They're
Okay.
afraid for their lives.
And should it be applied in an even-handed way? That's an easy
No, our foreign policy doesn't require even-handedness. It
Well, wait,
requires prioritizing the interests of the United States.
statutory phrase says you are entitled to entrance as a refugee if you demonstrate a well-justified fear of persecution.
No, you're not entitled,
So
you're
can you
allowed.
have a different standard based upon the color of somebody's skin? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'm not the one arguing that. Apparently you are, because you don't
No,
like the fact that they're
I'm
white,
just
and that's why
asking
they're
you to
coming.
say that that would be unacceptable.
no,
That
I would say that
seem
the
to
United
be a
States-
very easy thing
The United
to say.
States has a right to pick and choose who they allow into the United
Even
States.
based on the color of somebody's skin.
You're the one that's talking about the color of their skin, not me. These
You're
are people whose
refusing to
farms were being
acknowledge
burned
that it
down and they
should
were
be
killed because of the
even-handed.
color of their skin.
Well,
Not because
I'm-
they were- Well, you've demonstrated enough because you think anyone should be allowed into this country for any reason because they met a certain
Who has
criteria.
said that?
We are going to prioritize people that come into our country on the basis of what's in the interest of this country. That's a small number of people that are coming.
But
in
you
that
said
particular case.
this weekend that
But
there
in
would
other
be more.
cases, it's harder to vet. In other cases, it's more difficult. And by the way, the United States admits people every year. 1 million people come to this country every year legally. 1 million
And
people
now
a year come to this
there
country
is one
legally.
group
No
of
other
people
country
that
in the
have
world
an
is nearly as
easy
generous.
pass into this country. For the first time, this administration has said Afrikaners get an easy pass and refugee programs for the remainder of the world are shut off. And you can't say to the American public that we should apply this statute in an even-handed way.
No, I
I'm
think it should
shocked
be
at that,
applied in a
and I
way.
yield
No, well, you
back.
shouldn't be shocked. It should be applied in the national interest of the United States. Our immigration policy should be based on the national interest of the United States. Period. End of story. If there is a subset of people that are easier to vet, who we have a better understanding of who they are and what they're going to do when they come here, they're going to receive preference, no doubt about it. There are a lot of sad stories around the world. Millions and millions of people around the world. It's heartbreaking. We cannot assume millions and millions of people around the world. No country can. So you have to have a process of deciding who do you prioritize, who do you allow in. We do it all the time. We do it in our immigration system now under our current laws. Unfortunately, it's primarily based on family connection and not on what they're going to contribute to the society from a merit standpoint. That should be changed, but that'll require statutory changes. But the bottom line is this notion that somehow we have to accept anyone who wants to come to the United States is absurd. No country in the world has an immigration policy like that.
And no one is arguing that we should. I yield back.
Do you believe African farmers are the most persecuted group in the world? That was the first thing out of Senator Kaine's mouth, and it set the whole tone for what came next. Rubio didn't flinch. He said the people who were let in had gone through the proper vetting, came from a place where land grabs and farm attacks are actually happening, and that your situation met the legal bar for refugee status. Simple, direct, no theoretics. So here's the basic setup. Kaine wanted to know why While pretty much every other refugee program in the country is on pause, this one specific group of African farmers got their own special pathway in. He walked through how the whole refugee system is supposed to work, pointed out that a bunch of long-standing resettlement programs have been shut down under executive action, and basically asked, why them? His argument was that if you're going to say these farmers are being persecuted, you have to answer for all the other people sitting in camps and danger zones right now who didn't get the same consideration. Religious minorities, political prisoners, people running from actual war zones. Why not them? Rubio's answer was pretty straightforward. He said, look, millions of people around the world are suffering. That's true, but no country can take in everyone. At some point, you have to make calls. Who can we actually vet properly? Who fits within our security standards? Who makes sense given where we are right now as a country? Then it got more philosophical. Kaine pushed back on the idea that this group deserved special treatment at all. He pointed out that South Africa currently has a functioning coalition government and challenged the whole widespread persecution framing. His position was basically, refugee law should apply the same way to everyone, no favorites. Rubio said that's never actually been how it works. U.S. immigration policy has always been selective. It has always been tied to foreign policy, national security, and what is practical at a given moment. He argued that that's not unfair, that's just governing. The sharper it got, the clearer the split became. Kaine kept coming back to fairness and consistency, while Rubio kept coming back to sovereignty and national interest. Neither was going to budge, and honestly, that's the bigger argument. This whole thing is really about, should refugee policy try to be universally fair across all groups and nationalities, or should a government have full discretion to pick and choose based on its own priorities and security needs? That's not a question with an easy answer, and both sides know it. Your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you actually stand on this. See you on the next one.